Day one of the defense case, and Jackson, under a sea of umbrellas, makes his way into the Santa Maria courthouse. But before Team Jackson calls its first witness, Attorney Robert Sanger for the defense asked the court, as it is no surprise to anyone, to throw out the prosecution's case. Here's how that legal battle played itself out according to the courtroom transcripts.
We have witnesses who have committed perjury on the stand, who were put up on that stand and who got up there and lied. And I'm not just arguing this. I'm going to point out through a few witnesses where I believe the evidence conclusively shows that there are lies, and that anybody who looked at this case from any aspect, whether it be the jury box or the bench or the counsel table, would have to say these people have been willfully false. And if the key witnesses have been willfully false, and the other witnesses that were put on have pretty much self-destructed to a large extent, what is this case all about?
I am offended, and I'm sick and tired of the defense standing up in this case, as they've done for months and months and months and months, saying that they don't take it lightly when they accuse somebody of perjury. They said this when they accused me of perjury. They said that when they accused me of suborning perjury. They accused Mr. Auchincloss of that. And now they're accusing Mr. Zonin of some impropriety. I think they do take it lightly. And the fact of the matter is, there's a common denominator. Anybody who stands in their way, whether it's Janet, Gavin, Starr, Davlin, Rudy Provencio, or anybody else in this case that says one thing bad about the defendant in this case are perjurers.
Woo, a little feisty there. We'll see how feisty Howard Weitzman and Sean Chapman-Holly will be when we talk about that. But now Judge Rodney Melville denied the defense motion for an acquittal, folks. So on with the rest of the trial. Wade Robson is a famous choreographer. He's choreographed for Britney Spears and NSYNC. Now he's going to also be known as the defense's first witness in the Michael Jackson trial.
Do you consider Michael Jackson your friend?
Yes.
Do you consider him a close friend?
Yes.
You're aware of the allegations in this case, are you not?
Yes.
And are you aware, as you sit here today, that there's been allegations that Mr. Jackson molested you?
Yes.
Mr. Robson, did Michael Jackson ever molest you at any time?
Absolutely not.
Mr. Robson, did Michael Jackson ever touch you in a sexual way?
Never. No.
Mr. Robson, has Mr. Jackson ever inappropriately touched any part of your body at any time?
No.
Great first witness out of the box. We're going to be with this witness for some time. So let's go back to that argument for dismissal, commonly known as an 11-18 motion. Howard, Sean, it never or very rarely gets granted. Why does the defense even make it?
Well, first of all, you have to make it to preserve a record for the Court of Appeals. But it was interesting, the piece that we saw dealt with credibility, and that really is a jury issue. That's not an issue for the judge. The hissy fit from Mr. Snedden was a different issue, and he gets offended when they're accused of perjury, and I guess the defense gets offended where they're accused of...
Well, they really didn't even need to make the perjury argument, because even if you accept the credibility, as far as I'm concerned, of the truth of the prosecution's case with regard to conspiracy, they just didn't prove it. So he really didn't need to go there and talk about perjury with regard to their witnesses. Simply say, even if you believe them, there's no connection to Michael Jackson and there's no conspiracy. And for that reason, the motion should be granted.
Does making that kind of argument tip the hand of the defense to the prosecution to give them some sort of edge? This is what we got to get ready for?
No, I don't think so. I think the two sides have pretty well telegraphed where they're going in this case.
Yeah, and sometimes, James, the 11-18 motion does get granted. And in this case, really, I think that it should have been well taken. Now, this judge, of course, was never going to grant it, but the conspiracy charge was not proved. James, you know that.
Sean,
it is what it is.
I'm just getting beat up today. Ricky's not here. I got to buck up, folks. I can do it. As the direct examination continues, the witness testifies it was all child's play.
Do you recall staying in Mr. Jackson's room on other occasions?
Yes.
And typically, when you'd stay in Mr. Jackson's room, what would you do?
What would we do as far as just...
Sure, anything.
Yeah. We'd watch same thing. We'd watch movies, we'd play video games, you know. We'd have a pillow fight every now and then. We'd talk, hang out.
How many times do you think you've stayed in Mr. Jackson's room at Neverland?
Same amount of times as I've been there. Well, no, that's not true. I'm sorry. I've been there a bunch of times without Michael, just with other friends and family traveling there. But I don't know, maybe 15 to 20.
And at no time has any sexual contact ever occurred between you and Mr. Jackson, right?
Never.
Have you ever taken a shower with Mr. Jackson?
No.
Have you ever gone swimming with Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
And please explain what you mean.
One time with my sister and I and Michael, we went in the jacuzzi at Neverland Ranch.
And do you know approximately when that was?
I don't. I can't say for sure. I have a feeling that it was within the first trip in '89 when I went there.
Do you recall what Mr. Jackson was wearing in the jacuzzi?
From my recollection, he was wearing shorts, you know, like swimming shorts, and that was it.
Did anything inappropriate ever happen in that jacuzzi?
No.
Has anything inappropriate ever happened in any shower with you and Mr. Jackson?
No. Never been in a shower with him.
And as you should come to expect, on cross-examination, the questions get a little tougher.
All right. Now, you asked Michael Jackson if you could share his room with him. Now, what caused you to do that? You were 7 years old. What caused you to ask him if you could stay with him in his room?
Well, it's the same way with any child. When you have a best friend or a new friend that you found, you always want to stay in the same room with them.
He was in his mid-30s, is that right?
Yes, I guess so.
Had you ever crawled into bed with a 30-year-old man prior to that day?
My father.
Okay.
But other than that, no.
Any person who you had just met?
No.
All right. And in fact, throughout your entire adolescent years, you had never slept with any other man other than Michael Jackson and your father. Is that correct?
Never slept in a bed with any other man, no.
Now, at any time, did you start to develop conversations with your mother about the propriety of sleeping with this man who's now well into his 30s?
No.
Did you consider it unusual at all?
No.
Did your mother consider it unusual?
No.
Did you ever talk to your father about it?
Yeah.
You talked to your father about your sleeping with Michael Jackson?
No. I mean, you know, everybody knew, and nobody ever said that it was... We never talked about it being unusual or anything like that.
Did your mother ever ask you if anything inappropriate happened in bed with him?
No.
Did she simply assume nothing happened?
Yes.
You're telling us nothing happened, is that right?
Yes.
All right. What you're really telling us is nothing happened while you were awake. Isn't that true?
I'm telling you that nothing ever happened.
Mr. Robson, when you were asleep, you wouldn't have known what had happened, particularly at age 7, would you have?
I would think something like that would wake me up.
Okay. Okay. Compose yourself. The prosecution's theory is that this witness that they didn't call, but who they say was molested, didn't remember because he was asleep when it happened. Is that right?
The prosecution's theory is if they're called by the Jackson camp, they must be lying. Gee, doesn't that sound familiar? First of all, I remember Wade Robson. I talked to Wade Robson. Okay. I remember this kid very well, and some of the other witnesses we'll see. And he was as strong as he could be 12 years ago as he is now with respect to what happened.
And this is the witness who the maid said she saw with Michael Jackson in the shower. Is that correct?
Yes.
So he flatly contradicts that. He appears to be very credible. He says, no, that didn't happen. And this maid, of course, received money from Michael Jackson and therefore has a motive to lie.
And let's remember that testimony. She doesn't say she specifically sees him. Remember, it was foggy in the shower. Yes. She may have saw two people, wasn't quite sure, testified she couldn't tell, and now this comes out.
This is the young man I think she was trying to describe.
Yes.
But devastating cross-examination at the end there when he asked him if maybe it happened while he was sleeping. Come on.
That's going to be a tough. So that's even a tough sell for me, folks. What do you think this? How do you think this all pulls together? We'll talk about that as we continue. Still ahead. Another alleged victim stands up for Michael Jackson, but what about those sexually graphic books? Stay with us.
The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back. On cross-examination, Assistant District Attorney Ron Zonin asked the choreographer Wade Robson how that shared bed situation all got started. Here's what the jury heard according to the courtroom transcripts.
Did Michael Jackson ever have a conversation with you wherein the subject of the conversation was that it was okay for you to sleep with a 30-something-year-old man?
Yeah.
He did?
We would both talk about it.
Really? From what age? When did that first conversation happen?
I don't remember.
Were you 7?
I don't remember.
Was it the first week that you were there?
No.
Do you think it was soon after you moved to the United States?
I really don't remember.
What was the nature of that conversation?
I don't remember an exact conversation. I'm sure it's just something, we talked about at some point. That it's fine.
Did Mr. Jackson ever tell you that you were family to him?
Yes.
Did he tell you that often?
Yes.
Did he tell you that he would take care of you?
No.
Did he tell you he would protect you?
Yes.
Next, a book review of property seized at Neverland.
Let's start with one titled Boys Will Be Boys. I'd like you to take a look at a few of the pages. Just go ahead and start turning pages, please. Stop there for a moment. Would you describe the picture on the right side?
There's a young boy with his legs open and he's naked.
All right. The picture prominently displays his genitalia, does it not?
Yes.
That boy looks to you to be approximately how old?
Maybe 11, 12.
That's how old you were when you were sleeping with Michael Jackson, is that right?
Yes.
And that many of the photographs, if not most of the photographs, depicted in that book are of boys nude, is that correct?
Yes.
And in fact, in most of those pictures, the genitalia is prominently displayed, is that right?
Yes.
Would you be concerned with a person who possesses a book like that?
No.
Would you be concerned about having your 12-year-old child in bed with a person who possesses a book like that?
No.
You would have no such concern?
No. To me, it's not a pornographic book. It's sort of, I don't know, just a book.
Is it a fact as you look through that book, what is depicted in that book, throughout that book, are a series of photographs of two men engaged in sex acts with one another?
Yes.
And in fact, the sex acts are all acts of either masturbation, oral sex, or sodomy. Is that right?
From what I saw, yes.
And sodomy, as you understand it, is an act of anal sex. Is that correct?
Yes.
Would you be concerned about a person who possesses that book crawling into bed with a 10-year-old boy?
Yes, I guess so.
Objection!
Objection, objection, objection,
Okay.
objection.
Let's just kind of set this up for our viewers. This is one of those books that was seized in the 1993 search of the Neverland estate, having to do with the young 1993 much touted victim with the large settlement, okay? That book has been locked up in a cabinet in a police evidence locker this many years. Why is it appropriate and why does it matter what this witness thinks about that book?
This witness has never seen it. He testifies he's never seen that book. Michael Jackson never showed him that book. How is the judge allowing the prosecution to ask questions of this witness about a book he's never seen?
The answer to that question
Tell me, Howard,
is
tell me.
the judge is letting in as much negative evidence as he can.
This is
and James,
outrageous.
you have to concede this is outrageous.
It seems to be, but where is the defense? Why isn't Mesro on his feet constantly?
I can't imagine.
Maybe it's one of the mechanics, perhaps, of how the trial goes. They did it outside of the presence of the jury.
Yeah. If he didn't make a motion ahead of time, there's no excuse for not
Explain what you
objecting
mean
to
by
this.
that.
I mean, he could have made a motion before this line of questioning, outside the presence of the jury, objecting to it, and the judge could have overruled it and said, no, I'm going to allow it. Then there'd be no point of him objecting in front of the jury.
But wouldn't there still be a point? We got to play this other piece of tape. But wouldn't there still be a point in objecting to it, so the jury knows you don't think this is okay?
Yes.
On redirect examination,
Yes.
on redirect examination, they answer, even though, I really don't want them to. On redirect examination, defense attorney Tom Mesro tries to set the record straight.
Mr. Robson,
Yes.
That's your fiancée right there, correct?
Yes.
You are heterosexual, correct?
Yes.
You are a close friend of Michael, correct?
Yes.
By the way, did Michael Jackson ever... Oh, I'll ask from there. When you were a young child, did Michael Jackson ever show you any sexually explicit material?
No.
Did you ever see Michael Jackson show sexually explicit material to any child?
No.
Now, witness number 2 for the defense. His name is Brett Barnes, another young man who the prosecution claims was molested by Michael Jackson. Barnes quit his job as a roulette dealer in Australia just to come into court and testify.
Have you ever stayed in Michael Jackson's bed?
Yes, I have.
How many times do you think you have?
Countless as well.
Has Mr. Jackson ever molested you?
Absolutely not. And I can tell you right now that if he had, I would not be here right now.
Has Mr. Jackson ever touched you in a sexual way?
Never. I wouldn't stand for it.
Has Mr. Jackson ever touched any part of your body in a way that you thought was inappropriate?
Never. It was not the type of thing that I would stand for.
Are you familiar with a jacuzzi at Neverland?
Yeah.
Ever been in the jacuzzi?
Yes, I have.
Do you recall Michael Jackson ever being in the jacuzzi with you?
I don't recall. He possibly could have, but I really don't remember.
Do you ever recall taking a shower with Michael Jackson?
Never.
Are you aware of any allegations being made that Mr. Jackson inappropriately touched you when you were with him?
Yes, I am, and I'm very mad about that.
You're mad about it?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's untrue, and they're putting my name through the dirt, and I'm really, really not happy about it.
This really underscores one of the big problems for the prosecution. Certainly there are many, according to both of you. But the fact that they allege that there are individuals who were molested and those very individuals now show up and say, no, it didn't happen.
James, this is another guy that I spent some time interviewing and talking to, Brett Barnes and his family.
As a result of working on the 1993 case.
Correct.
On behalf of Michael Jackson.
As strong back then when he was young, and he's strong today. And it's the same story.
You know, when any witness testifies for either side, a juror has to ask, does this person have a reason to lie?
Yeah.
And with regard to the prosecution witnesses, the answer was usually yes. They got money, they sold their stories, they were trying to get money. These witnesses so far have no reason to lie.
But do they? After all, who wants to be known as yet another victim of Michael Jackson? Is that not incentive and motivation enough? But will the jury see it that way? When we return, we know that young boys spent the night with Michael Jackson, but did any of them continue to share his bed when they got older? Stay with us.
The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back. Brett Barnes testified that he spent many nights with the King of Pop and claims that Michael Jackson during that time never touched him. On cross-examination, Assistant District Attorney Ron Zonin questions how long that sleeping arrangement continued. Here's how Barnes testified according to the courtroom transcripts.
So you stayed in the room with Michael Jackson when you were 18 years old?
Yeah.
You're 22 now?
23.
So you were 19 years old?
Yeah, I guess.
Did you share a bed with him at that time?
Yeah, I did.
You did? Have you been sharing a bed with him consistently from age 9 until age 19?
What do you mean by consistent?
Well, in all the times that you visit, predominantly, do you stay in his room in his bed?
Yeah.
Did you do it when you were 10 years old as well?
Yeah.
Did you ever travel with Michael Jackson anywhere?
Yes, I did.
Where?
South America, North America, Africa, and Europe.
On those occasions...
And Australia as well, I'm sorry.
On those occasions, did you share a bed with him?
Yes.
Were any other people present while you were in the room with him?
I don't recall. I can't remember.
All right, guys, let's try this one on for size. Is there any way, as you two skilled artisans of the trade can conceive, that the prosecution could have called either of these two young men in their case in chief?
No.
Anyway?
I don't think so. They've been very consistent in their story from day one. I wouldn't have put on the breadth of testimony that the prosecution put on. I've said from day one, narrow focus, put on the alleged victim, the brother, the kid from 1993, the housekeeper's kid, and get out.
But don't they paint themselves in a corner by asserting that these kids were molested and then not calling them?
Yeah, well, that's the problem, I think, with Tom Sneddon having this myopic view of it. I mean, he's convinced that this molestation happened, and he's just willing to ignore all of the evidence that suggests that it didn't.
But there is
and that's a
something,
problem for him.
Is there not, the idea that no kid wants to admit that they were molested in public?
Yes.
Isn't there something to that?
But it was very interesting with the Sneddon snit that we saw this morning. and by that I mean his witnesses don't lie, everybody else's witnesses do lie, and it is possible that these kids were never molested, and in fact,
come on,
probable.
The defense has the same attitude. Their witnesses are telling the truth, and the prosecution's witnesses are lying, right?
Yeah, that's okay.
You heard it right here first, folks. It's okay. Michael Jackson going to testify?
Oh, he doesn't need to.
Yes,
no? I agree. I wouldn't put him on the stand.
All right. They still say maybe. That's it for today. We're on Macaulay Culkin Watch. Folks, be sure to catch our exclusive coverage of the Michael Jackson trial weekend wrap-up show Saturday, 10 a.m., 4 p.m. on 8.